Something I really appreciate about Singapore is actually this is where I feel free because I don't look like a minority and people don't expect me to be a certain way. People are questioning where are you from, but it doesn't feel hostile.
Meet Che, a US citizen born in China who studied at Stanford and worked in New York. 6 years ago, she moved to Singapore and made a midlife career switch from investment professional to a mental health therapist. She told me why she feels happy in Singapore, how the country political system compares to those in Europe and America, and what Singaporeans should be aware of when abroad. I'm Max Chernov, let's go!
So I was born in northern China. And then I spent half of my life in China, half of my childhood in China. So 9 years between my hometown, Harbin, close to Vladivostok.
You know, when I was a kid, I heard so many times like
About
the word
Harbin.
because there were a lot of sailors who go back and forth to Harbin and Vladivostok. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
The people who go there to sell sneakers and things like that. I have worked 3 times around the world. Singapore to US East Coast to China, back to Singapore to US East Coast, back to China. We did that a few times. And finally, when we had our last baby and around the time of COVID, we said, we actually just need to settle down in one place. And Singapore, I'm with you, is the best system I've seen. And I have seen authoritarianism, benevolent and less benevolent democracy, and a lot of socialist democracies in Europe. So I studied actually politics and economics for a while in university. So I thought a lot about systems, and this just feels good here.
Some people though say Singapore is like more on an authoritarian side.
But I think it's all relative, right? For me, you know, the worst things that I can't do here aren't that bad, whereas in other places that I've been, if I want to visit a certain website or read something or, you know, type a certain word to my friends, I'm being monitored. I don't want to say too much there, because I think you understand,
So now you're happy in Singapore, you're settled.
We're very happy here, I think for many international families, it's a question mark, right? We have elderly, one set is in Asia, the other set is in Europe. Where will the children be? Where will the children, find university, academic, and professional opportunities in the future? Where will we feel comfortable? My husband's European, but he also hasn't lived in Europe for a long time. I'm originally Chinese. I haven't lived in China for a while. I'm not sure in 10, 20, 30 years how we feel. But for now and for a while, it has felt like Singapore is the most welcoming place for us.
You lost all your Chinese accent, I think.
I never had a Chinese accent.
But before, when you grew up in China?
No, and this I inherited, I think, from my father. He has quite a musical ear. So before ever leaving China, he was speaking, according to family, friends, and his old colleagues, he was speaking with a BBC accent.
Oh, wow.
And for me, I studied languages. I studied French. I studied a little bit of German. And I'm told that I also don't have an accent in those languages. So it's just something, I think, genetic, that we hear the difference so we can make the sound. For many people, I think, who cannot mimic the sound, it's related to not being able to hear the difference.
Can you mimic a Singaporean accent?
Yeah lah.
English?
Also can.
Also can.
Yeah.
How many languages do you speak?
It's been a while. I speak professionally and at home, obviously with my husband, we speak English. With my own family, I speak Chinese. I can, write academic papers in French. And when we go to France, I can get around and speak and have conversations. My German is basic level, but I can understand and ask the touristy questions, right? Like how to get from here to there. I would like to order this and that. That's about it for now. I tried learning Portuguese a couple of years ago on Duolingo, but at this age with a job and kids and so many responsibilities, I find my productivity is quite low. But it's fun. If I could retire immediately and not think about anything else, I would attempt to learn maybe 6, 7 languages. That was my goal at some point as a teenager. I thought that'd be easy, right? I'll just speak 7 languages. But what I didn't know is life gives you responsibilities other than just learning languages.
Yeah, true.
But I very much enjoy it because I think language, mutually, language and thought, they shape each other and they shape culture. So with every language, or even with new words that I learned in a language, it helped me relate to other people better, not just because I could speak to them, but because I could empathize with what they're feeling. I remember in my 20s, I often thought that relationships were difficult because so many of my emotional words at that point, most of my life had been spent in my home environment. So a lot of my emotional words were in Chinese. And if I argued with somebody, I couldn't quite get the concept, and I would try to explain how I felt to them, and there was no adequate English word for it. But now I have the opposite problem because now I've spent more of my life speaking English, so it's hard for me maybe to translate some of those feelings into Chinese. Both my younger kids are bilingual, so they speak English and they speak Chinese. For a while, my son, from age 3, he was in a French play group. I had this trilingual upbringing fantasy, and then I realized it requires the parents to be very disciplined, and we haven't been very disciplined. So
how you maintain Chinese? You speak with them in Chinese?
We try at home. They obviously learn it in school, right? The Singapore preschools instruct part of the time in Chinese at school. Our kids, I think, are at the same school right now. It's 50-50 Chinese and English instruction. My mother lives with us after COVID. She's been living with us, so she's speaking Chinese to the kids.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, and what I've noticed is when they have that immersion experience, even if it's like a week, this year, Chinese New Year, I had a lot of my relatives come from China. They stayed with us, and both my kids, their Chinese got so good. Now I'm trying to make a more conscious effort to bring them back to China in the summers, to give them that environment, and also I think to give them a sense of home. Because we are here, but we're a small nuclear family here in Singapore. So to go to Europe sometimes and help them feel like they have roots in Europe, and to help them feel like they also have this cultural connection to China.
Yeah, and it's important for children. At some point, like I think when my daughter was 5, if you ask her where she's from, she would say like from our condo.
A very micro view.
The name of the condo. So then she can say, "Oh, I'm from Singapore." But then, it's important for, especially living in the bubble, like in Singapore. I mean, it's a nice bubble. Yeah, it's a perfect bubble. But you need to show them the real world. So that's not normal how people live in Singapore.
Oh yeah.
You need to go to Cambodia, some other places.
Not even the kids. Last year, my husband had a business trip to Hawaii. And so I went with him, and we realized that we could not behave the same way as we do here. We would walk into a restaurant, put our phones down on the table, and then go, to the counter. And then we had to remind each other, hang on a minute, this is not Singapore. If you leave your fancy iPhone on a table, somebody is tempted to take it, right? Walking around, I used to spend time in Hawaii before with, friends who were from there. So I thought I knew the place, and I tried to walk from my hotel to a yoga studio. And along the way, there were really segments where I thought, okay, this feels dangerous, right? And then when I got back to my hotel, I told some friends, and they were like, why would you do that? Why would you walk? Because to me, it's natural. Here, I enjoy walking. It's hot, but it's safe. So we do kind of lose our edge a little bit because of how comfortable everything is here. It's important to be here, but I think also get out and see the world to keep us on our toes.
By the way, guys, if you also wanna start working remotely, one of the options is to start your own YouTube channel. And I prepared for you a PDF guide how to make your first $1,000 from your YouTube channel. Okay, if you want this guide, it's for free. There's the link in the description. Go get it. And now back to the video.
And sometimes it's funny, I hear from some Singaporean friends that, Malaysia is dangerous. I don't go to Europe because it's dangerous. Come on.
This Malaysia is dangerous. I think I also bought into that. But I have a cousin actually who lives across the border in Johor. And every time after COVID, we've been visiting them more and more because my kids are growing up. It's nice for them to have a bigger family experience. And I realized it's kind of, my previous conception was, you drive across the border and there are people in ski masks with machine guns. We're going to take your car, and don't bring your iPad in the car because that's valuable. But now I'm like, well, you kind of drive across and it's the same. It's bigger. It's greener. The infrastructure looks a bit different, but it's not that different. And I'm sure there are dangerous parts, but that's true of everywhere, maybe except in Singapore, right? In every city, in every big city in the world, you would have the blocks that you don't want to walk alone, and the blocks that, you can taxi through, and the blocks you don't want to drive through.
Yeah, I think we all fall into this trap Like even me, I like last year, first time I started going to India because we're also expanding to India.
Oh yeah.
My expectations about India were like, it's gonna be mess and it's gonna be dangerous.
Where did you go?
I did go to Mumbai,
Yeah.
2 times in Mumbai, just
Yeah.
came back from Bangalore. But actually, okay, that's chaotic, but I kind of like the place and I don't feel in danger there. Okay, I'm
Has
a,
its
like
own order, yeah.
I'm a big guy, probably it's different for a different
Yeah.
group of people. But still, the same was with Manila. I went to Manila a couple of months ago, first time in the Philippines.
Okay.
And like also have like this misconception that Manila is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because I watched some YouTube video
Yeah.
and some random guy and he said Manila is, but no,
Yeah.
it's like in the city center, there's 2 nice areas, they're
Yeah.
like super safe.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to travel, need to see
Yeah.
the world yourself.
And also keep that, we need to have filters, right? To judge for ourselves and not take everything for granted. So some place can be dangerous, but there will be nice parts of it where you can let
Yeah.
your guard down. A place can be safe and there will be bad parts of it. So we need to know when we put on those glasses
Yeah.
of alertness. And that's maybe something that if I didn't take the kids out of Singapore regularly, that I worry they will not develop is the discernment, the ability to put on the critical lens and then to take them off, or the relaxed lens versus the be
Yeah.
alert lens. Yeah.
Not true, you have to be a bit street smart, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps in life.
Yeah. So this is a difficult skill to teach, especially in traditional kind of Confucian societies, more academically focused. We don't think street smart is necessarily a smart. We think
Okay.
it's for the people who couldn't get good grades. But now at my age, when I look at success, right, how people I went to school with, people I grew up with, success looks different in many different ways. It's not just the you must get an A, you must go to an Ivy League university, you must go work in a bank. You know, that's one model of success, but especially in our era, I think a lot of entrepreneurs do incredibly well. And some of them didn't graduate from, you know, maybe even high school or university, right?
But I actually still believe that good education helps a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are outliers who like
Yeah.
drop out of Stanford or some other like big unis
Yeah.
and they're successful.
Yeah.
But when I have a lot of like my social circle pretty big, and some people are just smart. Some people are just
Yes.
way smarter than me, and I know they went through
Yeah.
like good school, good uni,
Yeah.
and it helps.
It
I mean,
helps,
it's
yeah.
better to be
All things
street
being
smart
equal,
plus like academically
a little
smart.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have more choices, right? I think when I spoke about the world and life as freedom, it's if you have choice, then you have freedom. So
Yeah.
if you have the choice to go the booksmart route as well as the street smart route, then good for you.
What part of you is now is Chinese? What part of you is American?
I think the family values part of me is very Chinese. In me, I think there's a fierce loyalty to the people that I consider my family. And the part of me that is American or Western, I think is the directness. In Chinese, we don't say a lot of, I do this. Like the English construction is subject, verb, object. It's very direct.
Yeah.
It's almost rude. And for many years, when I worked for a large American investment company, when we had, portfolio managers in China doing business meetings, often I would translate, but I wasn't just translating the words. I had to rephrase because to say in Chinese, how come you didn't turn a profit this quarter, or how come you didn't grow as much as you said you would, that sounds so confrontational.
Yeah.
So I think that part of my personality now is very Western, and it's the part that I need to kind of keep in check a little bit in Asia, even in Singapore, right? Certain situations where I'm asking somebody to do something and I'm very direct about it, it comes across as aggressive. Whereas I think the Chinese and Chinese feminine way of doing it is a nicer, softer approach, or we never really say who is the subject, who didn't do it, who did it wrong, who did it right. We kind of go around in circles.
Yeah.
In Chinese, we call wei wan, right? And English, I think. So if American culture is a straight line, then I think Chinese culture is a circle.
Because that's the Asian thing, not to lose the face. I
Yeah,
think,
face, harmony, right? It's
Harmony.
important to get it done. And the spirit of capitalism, as exemplified, first and foremost, I think in America, is get it done. So who's getting it done? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? But in Chinese culture, it's Asian cultures, I think a lot of traditional cultures, it's about keeping everyone comfortable. So when you go straight line, then you're making someone uncomfortable. Let's make everybody comfortable.
That's super interesting, yeah.
Is it? So your kid, do you think she is straight line or circle?
She's a mix. I don't
Yeah.
know. With us, she's a straight line for sure. At school, I think different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think she'll have the identity crisis when she'll be
A bit
older.
older. Yeah.
Yeah, she was born in Ireland, but then we moved to Singapore. Then sometimes she used to go to Russia. Yeah, I think it's important to like explain to your kids your roots, kind of where from.
Yeah. I mean, in my profession, we say that human beings, we are sense-making creatures, and everyone, to stay sane and happy, we need a coherent narrative of what happened. So if something tragic happened to you, it makes the tragedy a little easier to bear if you have an explanation. And same, I think, for this core part of ourselves, which is identity. For your child, my child, to grow up and have a story of this is how I feel, and these are the parts of me that are X, and these are the parts of me that are Y. I think an identity crisis is inevitable and maybe healthy, because people that don't ever leave their town or their country, maybe they don't really have the opportunity to examine themselves closely and make some conscious choices. Rather, they're just going by what's expected and what's normal.
Yeah.
And the best part of, I think, this international nomadic life is that you're constantly examining and questioning. Is this normal? Am I, what are the other possibilities here? I think the world opens up a lot more, and mentally you're a lot more flexible, right? You accept that people are different.
Yeah, I mean, for both of my kids, they traveled at their age. So my younger one is almost 1. And
So you have a really little one.
The 11 months, yeah.
Yeah.
And they been to, like younger one already been to maybe 3-4 countries. The older one, 7-year-old one, she's been, I don't know, to 15-20 countries.
Wow.
Like my first time abroad was
A lot older.
20. I went to the US, like I was living in my town like called Volgograd in Russia when we moved from Vladivostok to there.
Oh, did you?
My
Okay.
first time abroad was in the US. So it was like mind blowing.
Totally different.
Totally, yeah. I
And
wasn't.
that's the age when pop culture, like, the brands, the people, the celebrities, the music, the movies, right?
I was 20 or 5.
Yeah.
And I grew up watching all these movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and all this Sylvester Stallone, all this Steven
So like
Seagal.
Rocky and yeah.
And then you see it in real life. It's like mind blowing.
So we're doing that next summer. For my son, who was born in the US, but he has no memories of it. And for my daughter, who's never been, and my older kids, my stepchildren, they've also never been. So my son, until recently, was saying, "Oh, we're going to go to New York. I'm going to see some Ninja Turtles," right? Because that's the pop culture reference point they have. But it'll be exciting, I think, for them and for us to revisit America as a family.
What's your view on the US right now? Are you okay? You US
So now I'm a
passport holder.
US citizen because I spent almost 20 years as an adult in and out of the US to the point where, I could qualify. I also had one of my children there, and that was the point where it was important for me to decide.
Yeah.
If I had to choose something, I wanted to give my children the option to just say, I want to study abroad for a semester, or I want to travel somewhere for the weekend. Working in the US with my previous status, I couldn't take any of the overseas assignments because the projects were 3 months long, and by the time I finished my visa application, I was there trying to get a visa to go back to the US. And I felt like maybe I missed out a lot of opportunities that young people should experience. So I wanted to give my children options. And once my children, one of my children was born American, it was clear that if something were to happen in the world geopolitically, I wanted us to be on the same side. So I suppose some of it is a strategic decision, but a lot of it is just a motherly decision. Like I wanted freedom for my children. I wanted to be free with them.
Yeah.
Gosh, that sounds more political than I intended. Freedom!
Freedom.
It's not like,
It's the American side is vocal about this stuff.
Just choices. And I think it reflects in my personality, right? In my career, I have changed, and I believe strongly that if you have a passion, that you should go for it. And the fewer constraints there are, the easier, whether the constraint is mental, emotional, or systemic, right? What passport do you have? I saw in my time a lot of talented, people my age, Chinese engineers, scientists who were denied re-entry to our university simply because of political tensions. And that's a tragedy, right? When somebody has spent so much time pursuing something that they're talented at, and it's random who's getting the job, who's getting to go in, who has the right to study or contribute to academia. It all seems a bit arbitrary, that so much in our modern life is free and choice-driven, but so much that's fundamental is still based randomly on where you happen to be born. That's not a choice that we make, right? That's a choice that's made for us. So I try to make a conscious choice for my children.
Yeah, true. And it's the same as moving the house. So you're in the process of moving to another place.
Yeah.
When you stay in the old house, always something, you need to fix something. So you need to be like, you need additional mental capacity to like fix things.
Yes.
It's the same as like with visas.
The number of hours cumulatively that I spent, filling out forms, preparing my bank statements, getting this letter issued, that letter issued, compiling it, back when I was trying to go to Stanford University, when I was 18, going to the US for the first time, the stack of papers that you have to prove, it's astounding. And then, in my day, we had to do that every 3 to 6 months. It wasn't like you're in, you get to stay until you finish your degree. Every time I left the country, I had to, prepare to be rejected to go back. Yeah. So I think I lived often with that feeling of being turned away. And something I really appreciate about Singapore is actually this is where I feel free, because I don't look like a minority and people don't expect me to be a certain way. They maybe think I'm Chinese Singaporean or I've studied abroad or, they're questioning. People are questioning, where are you from? But it doesn't feel hostile. Whereas sometimes in Western countries, I feel there's a hostile kind of curiosity. Where are you really from? Yeah. And the current situation between US and China, that's not an innocent question sometimes.
How would you describe your Stanford experience now?
It was a fantastic experience. And I was probably underprepared for it. When I arrived on campus, I think I was just amazed and a little bit out of my depth with how sophisticated the American kids were. Because in a more traditional education, and I didn't do Chinese school all the way through, but I think traditional Chinese values around studying is you study. But the American education is very much about you learn to socialize, you do extracurricular activities, you do sports, you do volunteering, you go get an internship. A lot of things that historically maybe Chinese parents would have said, that's distracting from your studies, don't do that. But when I arrived at school, 18-year-olds, meeting each other at orientation saying, hey, let's do lunch. And I'm like, oh, what is do lunch? Right? Like, what does that mean? Yeah. And then I realized probably later than I would have liked that doing lunch is how you make friends and get things done. Yeah. That it's not just about what grade you can get and finding the right answer, that it's a lot more about the social skills.
How was it for you in Chinese school? Different? What did you do for socializing?
You don't. You study, maybe you do homework at a younger age, you still have time to do homework with your friends, but it's similar, I think, to Singapore, right? A lot of parents whose kids are in MOE schools say that the children's lives revolve around school, enrichment, examination. Right? And the enrichments are not built to foster social collaboration, for example, right? It's to teach you a skill, right? Go to Chinese tuition, go to English tuition, go to writing, composition tuition. Maybe you do public speaking, but that's still somewhat an academic endeavor. I enjoyed Chinese school because when I was younger, I was very much organized, and I think that's the genetic part. My father was very organized, so I'm also very organized. I was competitive. I wanted to get the best grades. And I really, really enjoyed Stanford immensely. I went back for the first time. It was my 20th year reunion last year. I still felt the same, wow, I was so lucky to go there. And I made that choice without ever seeing it. I didn't really know much. I kind of looked at a map of the US and said, okay, my parents say I should go to school here. What are the choices? And somebody told me, well, if you go to California, you can drive a few hours and ski and then drive in the opposite direction and go to the beach. And I kind of was like, that sounds cool, I want to go there. And back in those days, most Chinese parents only knew one university in the US, and it was Harvard. So I think that was a bit of a rebel choice on my part. And I'm glad I made it because it was perfect. California was perfect for me at that time.
So you switched your career drastically. Yeah?
I did.
From
left brain to right brain.
Okay. Can you tell me how was it?
I think, so there was a book maybe about 15 years ago called The Excellent Sheep or something like Excellent Sheep.
Yeah.
And the sensational tagline was don't send your kids to the Ivy League. And the basic proposition was that when you set your kids up to be these straight A students going into a prestigious university, they are actually only looking for the risk-averse, safe people. They are looking for the kids who knew the checklist of things they had to do and did it. This is not going to be the innovators, the entrepreneurs. You know, Stanford's a little bit different because now we know there's a big entrepreneurship culture. Yeah. But on the whole, I kind of agree with that assessment that they are not picking intelligence or success as picking a certain profile of a young person. So I went into that university environment intending to major in French. And then September 11 happened, my second year at university. And then all around me, I saw people with Chinese passports. My friends were getting rejected, so they could not go back to university. And at that age, when you've spent your entire life working up to this goal of having a good degree so you can have a good job and do the right thing to your family or for your parents, that was scary. And I kind of pivoted, which a lot of liberal arts majors, I think, at the big universities in the US will do. You don't have to look very hard for investment banking or management consulting jobs to come to you. If you're an engineer, then, you know, Google, Facebook, all of these, Microsoft, these companies are all coming to you. So I went into finance kind of as a way of having a work visa to stay in the US, as a way of making some money so that I feel like, you know, I did justice to my parents for this expensive, you know, path of education that I've taken. I was good at it, but I often felt like I was a left-hander writing with my right hand. I could do it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do by nature. In my 20s, my father passed away, and in the China that I grew up, there was no spirituality framework. So there was no narrative of why people die, why good people die young. And there was also no, I think, framework for talking about it emotionally. The way we treat grief in Chinese culture is very much put it away. Don't make people sad. You know, in some other extreme cases in my family, you burn all the things that the living person had, so then their children don't even have something to look at, to remember. So I think as a way of figuring out myself, I started studying on the side just for fun. I started reading philosophy, religion, and also psychology. And for a while I was teaching yoga and, you know, living by these kind of yogic principles. And eventually I figured out that psychology is kind of structured enough and practical enough that I wanted to pursue that. So while I was working in finance, I spent 12 years part-time in graduate school studying psychology with the idea that I would get a degree and maybe do something with it. It took 12 years because I had kids, I got married, I got divorced, I got remarried. I did, I think, 5 global relocations in that time. So I changed, you know, multiple universities. I lost some credits, retook some classes. But finally, I graduated. And it actually came down to my husband. He said, if you don't finish this now, you're never going to finish it, right? Sure. It's going to be harder for you to change and try something new when you're 50. So why not do it younger? And so I did. I took the plunge and I haven't looked back. I think this is the perfect job for me for the maybe second half of my life. It's also a job that offers me as a working mother flexibility. You know, in the modern capitalist economy, there are very few interesting jobs that pay you well, that are respectable, that you can do part-time. And this is a structure where it's intellectually engaging. It's a respectable profession. You know, I'm fairly remunerated. And I get to say I can go into clinic on Tuesdays, but not Wednesdays, and I'm going to take 3 weeks off in the summer. That was impossible in my previous profession. Right? In finance, you're always trying to prove that you're the hungriest one so that you keep getting promoted and, you know, being given bigger opportunities.
But were you afraid to quit your stable, high-paid, I believe, job?
Shit scared. Yeah, I would say not just afraid. I think a lot of us at that age attach so much of our identity to our job. And in that profession in particular, because you work so many hours and the expectations are so high, you really have to tell yourself, this is the meaning and purpose of my life. So it's like saying, I'm no longer Chi, I'm going to be something else. And everybody, literally, my friends, well-intentioned, were saying things like, but you know, you can never come back. This is the best industry. You work for the best firm in the best industry. You know, are you going to be okay with making peanuts? Like all of these questions. And it was scary. But I think there's also a part of me that has always been a little bit of a rebel, for better or worse. I could never believe something because someone said it. I had to do it, which means I made a lot of mistakes in my life. But I had to do it to learn it through the experience and to convince myself. So it was scary. I had support. You know, my husband was very much like, you got to do the thing that, you know, you're curious about. And I reached a point in my career, in my first career, where I felt, you know, this is probably a good point to leave. I want to leave on a high. And so I did. And so far, so good.
Financially wise, I think that's the thing that many people are, why they don't take action or don't take this step. Because let's say you have 2 kids.
You have fixed costs, right?
You have a mortgage.
Absolutely.
And you're also used to some level of lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm also a big believer that you need to do what you love.
Be passionate.
That's what
and curious.
I'm trying to do. I was in a corporate. I left, I wasn't Procter & Gamble doing marketing, but I left 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think the older you get, the harder it becomes to change your career path.
I can say what made it easier is even in my 20s, through the books I was reading, the studying that I was doing on my own, I realized that if I made certain choices, I would set up my life so that I could never change, right? If I bought a big house, had a big mortgage, got used to always having a designer handbag or only flying business class. And so I was very conscious, no matter what income level I was at, to go with the core values of what I thought was important, right? For some people, it's food. For some people, it's education. For some people, it's travel experiences. So no matter how much I made, I tried to keep the same spending pattern because I knew that would eventually translate into freedom. And I think a lot of people who've read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, they'll remember this concept that he talks about, that people don't want more money. They want to live like they have more money. And for me, it was always, I don't want the big, nice things, the shiny things that are supposedly success, because that means entrapment. I am trapped in a lifestyle. And I'm trying to do the same with my children, to show them, and this is sometimes where my husband and I have disagreements. I say, yes, we can take them to really fancy places. Yes, we can treat them to nice things, but I don't want to do a disservice to them, such that when they graduate at 22 or 24, and they realize that actually the only way to have the same life that we gave them, they have to do a certain kind of job, then it cuts off their opportunity to explore an art, a creative passion, a freelance job, something more free form. So I really try to think about giving them things that I think a normal middle class life, if they, you know, do okay, then they can afford it. That gives them the freedom to choose something other than money as an imperative for living.
I have this idea what I want to teach my daughters when they are older, when maybe they are 14 or 15, to teach them how to make $1,000 a month somehow, online. Yeah. Because it's not super difficult to make like 1K. There are tons of like options how you can do it.
That's cool.
But then if they're like 15, 16, they know how to do it. Let's say they finish their high school,
right? Yeah.
They can have a gap year. They can go to and a lot of places, especially in this region, where you can live nicely. Cheaply, for just 1K, especially if you're like 18, 19-year-old. And that kind of gives you freedom, because 100% I agree. Freedom, people think they want money, but they want freedom. Actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, I agree with that. And I think it's also wonderful to find a partner and someone who co-parents, who believes in the same thing, you know, because a lot of my friends, because of where I went to school and how I started my career, they married each other. And even if one person wants to take it easy or change paths, the other person is like, but hang on a minute, our lifestyle. And so, you know, I never wanted to have the lifestyle be a stumbling block for life.
I think for me and my wife, we kind of, now we are matching each other more than before, because she graduated the best university in Russia. She was like top student at school in the uni. Then she did MBA in INSEAD, like also top school in Singapore, in France. And I was like, have an average university. I was like always like more like into music, into sports, more like
you brought the creativity.
And when we started dating, she was like more about like our kids. If we have kids, they have to go to the best uni. And I was like, maybe they don't need uni. Now we are kind of closer to each other. She's
so you're
like,
more like her.
I'm more
and
like
she's
to
a bit
her,
more like
and she lower her.
But that's a successful
expectations.
marriage.
Yeah.
Take it from a marriage therapist. That's a successful union where you come closer to each other's views, right?
Any advice for people who, let's say, they want to change their career path, but they are scared and they don't know what to do?
I think most of us engage in a kind of extreme thinking. It's, in psychology we call it black and white thinking, right? We think, if I do this, I'm going to be broke, I'm going to be a failure, and I can never come back. And very few things in life are like this, flip, flop. It's a continuum. So when you find yourself curious about something, what is the smallest step that you can take? You're not giving up your whole income, you're not giving up your whole lifestyle, you're just going to take a small step. So for me it was, I'm curious about this thing, so let me go read a book. And then I'm still curious, let me go pay for an online lecture. Oh, I'm still curious, let me take one graduate school course. I never had to tell myself, now I have to do this, full-time program, right? I always worked while pursuing it, and slowly let the change evolve rather than thinking of everything in life as a discrete jump from 0 to 1 or 1 to 100. Right? If you take small steps, you may find out that the things that you thought were true are not true. And if you make the steps too big, you will never take any steps. So you will never find out what's true and what's not true. So that's my advice, is believe in yourself and take the smallest step toward change to figure out what that might look like.
It's the same kind of for business. In most of the cases, there is no one single mistake that you make and
that
your
crumbles
business
everything.
fail like completely.
Yeah.
You need to actually like work hard to make this. You need to figure out like the biggest mistake that you can make. But most of the cases, if you make a mistake, it's fine. It's like your business will not. So it's the same for everything basically.
And maybe this is the common thread between my two different careers, is I always thought in terms of the worst case scenario. In investing, we think, is this going to go to zero, right? Or what is the worst value that I can recoup from this bad investment? And, in my new profession, it's also when I make those changes, I ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, I waste 3 months on this one online course. Big deal. Oh, I just spent $1,000 trying to get this training and it's not going to help me get a new job. It's $1,000. It's meaningful, but it's not going to change my life permanently, right? Or I'm going to look stupid. Well, I guess I never thought about the look stupid thing, because I just always assumed that people who are intellectually curious and interested in living a full life are going to try things, and not everything they try is going to work out. That's normal. A lot of times social pressure comes from people's insecurity and discomfort with themselves. When, let's say you're in a relationship and one person, both people are a little bit out of shape, but they're happy together. They, go home, watch Netflix, eat a bag of chips. And then one of them decides, for New Year's resolution, I'm going to get fit this year. And then they're going to the gym, they're eating celery sticks, they're not eating the chips, and they're not doing the Netflix because they're out at the gym. The biggest social pressure is from this person, because this person is suddenly like, what the hell are you doing? I thought our life was good. I thought I was pretty good. And now here you go changing, which makes me question, should I also change? And change is the scariest thing for human beings, because to try to change means that we may fail. And it's easier for most of us to say, if I don't even try it, I never have to face failure. So the social pressure, I think, is very much a way of keeping us all in check so that we all stay in our lane and don't ever have to face the scary possibility of failure. Certainly I think in finance, we have this a lot, right? Everybody telling you, you need to drive this car, you need to live in this house, you need your kids to go to the best private school. And that's partly capitalism telling you, you need to devote everything to this one job. Because if you had options, my gosh, what might you do? You might be French and decide that you want a 40-hour work week. You might travel, you might take a gap year like European students do.
And I often find that people exaggerate how bad the reaction will be from their friends and family. We have this 12 months program, like Side Hustle YouTube Mastery. And so we actually teach people how to start, grow, and monetize YouTube channels.
Cool.
And one of the questions that people ask, I will have haters, and I don't want people to hate me. A lot of people scare about it. And normally what we say, it's like, okay, you need to be really big to start experiencing
have haters. Yeah.
No, for sure. Like
Yeah.
for us, we are quite sizable in
Yeah.
now in terms of the viewership. And now we have haters. Now we see it, but like let's say even half a year ago, we didn't see many of them.
Okay guys, if you want to start a YouTube channel to create a side passive income for you and your family, or maybe at some point you want to do it full time and make a living out of it like myself, then join an early bird list of my YouTube Mastery. It's a 12 months program where I will help you to start and grow your YouTube channel and make money out of it. Link is here, and now back to the video.
And the other one is, surprisingly, many people will be supportive, and you don't expect some people will be supportive when you do something.
Yeah.
But then it's like, for some reason, people like kind of think they all will kind of be ashamed of me.
They're all gonna laugh at me or
They're all
something
gonna
like
laugh
that.
at me, yeah. But in the reality, sometimes people like your friends can say, "Oh, good job, yeah, I like this one, yeah. What you like the channel? I watched the video, yeah, not too bad." So it also depends on like how healthy your social circle are.
Yeah.
You need also to work on it.
And the mutual opening up, the trust, because everyone assumes you're also the same like them, right? We're in a social pact to give each other pressure so we stay in our lane and do something safe.
Yeah.
And the minute you say, I'm actually a bit more curious and daring, I want to change, that motivates some other people to be like, that's cool, I also think about that, but I haven't done it, right? Then you realize actually you both had the secret desire to do something else. I found this too in my career because I made a lot of changes, and each time I made change, it was like that. Like everybody at the company is going to be shocked, or your mentors are going to give up on you. But every time I made a change, most of what I heard was, wow, I've been curious about that. How did you decide? Or I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
And then I see other people then also making small changes. So don't underestimate the power of our ability to influence and change the culture, right? To go from a culture of safety, risk aversion, and social pressure to maybe a social encouragement to, hey, you're curious about that? Try it. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Your main clients are expats for your therapy, or no?
I probably work with, I would say 40, 60. So 40%, Singaporean couples in my couples work, and 60% international mixed couples.
What are the difference in terms of their problems and challenges for foreigner couples and local couples?
On the surface, there are differences, right? Like a lot of mixed couples have to cope with cultural differences or differences on where we should retire, where should we go, how much time do we spend visiting your family versus visiting mine. And maybe for the Singaporean couples, it's a bit more straightforward. We visit one of our families this Sunday, and the next Sunday we visit yours. Yeah. But fundamentally, across cultures, and the research also shows this, couples experience the same problems.
What are the main ones?
Gosh, if we go really like metaphysical level, it's...
Okay, 1, 2, 3. What's the biggest problem?
Oh gosh, if I want to be kind of cheeky about it, for married couples with children, number one problems, money, sex, kids. Money, how are we managing it? 2, sex, why are we not having it? 3, kids, how are we raising our children? Do we have the same values? But if I pull one level up from that sensational headline of top 3 couples issues, it's really that we are all fundamentally trying to feel connected because we are social creatures, right? We are not leopards. We don't travel alone. Our mental, emotional, and physical well-being, right? The stressors that damage our immunity and shortcut our longevity, these are all related to the strength of social relationships. When we study people who went to war, Afghanistan, Iraq, they come back, the likelihood of them developing PTSD, the top contributor, apart from their experience in war, is the strength of their social connections. So if you come back and you feel like your partner or your friend or your family is actually there for you and you can talk to them and share what you experience and they won't judge you and you don't have to hide it in shame or fear, then your likelihood of developing PTSD much lower. The people, previous generations, the ones that went to Vietnam in the 60s, came back and they were told, don't talk to your wives. You don't want to hurt them with the difficult things that you did. Keep it to yourself. Much more likely to develop mental and, physical health symptoms. So the number one imperative, I think, in life is to not feel alone. And when it comes to human relationships, romantic relationships, Why are people having affairs? Why are people going to drinking, gambling, doing unhealthy things? It's often to escape this feeling of disconnection, to escape the loneliness. And the loneliest place you can be, oftentimes, is inside of a relationship. Because it's there, supposed to provide you with connection and comfort. But when you don't have that, the contrast to what you would like to have and what you're actually getting is so jarring that we go to, medicate ourselves or numb ourselves, with different methods, right?
So what's the solution? How to overcome it? Or like there are maybe three simple steps that people can take.
I think reconnection is important, and maybe this is particularly relevant in the Singapore context. In many traditional cultures, we are very hesitant to discuss difficult things. We are conflict avoiders. We want to preserve the peace. So if you never talk about it, then how do you know how to make each other feel better? Right? Between you and your partner, if your MO is let's never discuss difficult things, you're not giving your partner the opportunity to actually give you something better. And often then we spend 20 years, 30 years with the assumption, well, they never wanted to support this thing I did. But when you actually say it, and I see this, I've worked with couples in their 50s to their 20s, they sit down and they look at each other and they're like, oh, I never knew you thought that. That's not what I meant. I was actually trying to help, but the other person misinterpreted it as a rejection. Communication is really important. But before communication, I would say awareness is the precursor. Because you have to have something to communicate about. And most of us are communicating about the wrong things, like, oh, you didn't do the laundry, or, you left the dishes in the sink. Well, it's not about the event. It's about the meaning. And the reason we get worked up is because we think this event means something big for life. For example, my mother was a stay-at-home wife and she suffered so much doing all the chores alone. I'm a career woman. So if you leave your socks outside the washing machine and didn't put them in, that means you're trying to turn me into my mother. That kind of story is what gets people worked up. So first, develop awareness of the things that really matter to you, the things that really bother you, and what outcome you would like to have. So number one. And then number two is articulate that awareness, right? So communicate now with your partner. And a lot of therapy is coaching people how to say things in an acceptable way, right? Yes. Not, you never do this, but more like, when this happens, I feel quite alone. I feel unsupported. That's a lot easier for your partner to receive. Yeah. So once you get through awareness and articulation with each other, you're on your way to action. Now you can change. You don't like this marriage that you're in right now? Well, what's the version of marriage that you guys want to be in? And can you work together? Act differently to make that happen. So I've just now grossly simplified couples therapy, right? Just figure out what you want, talk about it, and do it.
No, that's simple, but
it's hard.
It's not simple when you start going deeper.
Yeah. Because asking people to reflect on themselves is asking you to look at all the parts of you that are imperfect, a little bit weird, too stubborn, not secure enough, fearful. It asks you to really be honest about yourself. And then the next step is even scarier. Now I have to tell my partner that, sometimes I feel fat or stupid, or maybe I don't make enough money, and, you think I'm a failure, you think you could have done better, you're still in love with your ex-partner, like all of these things. They're very, very scary. But I still think it's scarier to live the next 20, 40, 50 years of your life in an uncomfortable relationship, rather than to take a little bit of a step toward maybe trying to make it a little bit better. Yeah. So many marriages are stuck in this roommate situation, or living together apart, right? Yeah. Okay, we share the house, we share the bills, we share the kids, we share the chores, but that's it.
Yeah, until the kids get older, get to the university.
Yeah, that is incredibly lonely. And here in Singapore, I think I have to mention this, we have a legal sex industry. Yeah. So it is another avenue of connection. Right. When couples are feeling disconnected and lonely, oftentimes you find women are more willing to talk to their friends about their problems, so then they find companionship with their, same-sex friends. And men maybe have the easy option of, going to a sex worker. That momentary physical connection, which is a financial transaction, can be a poor substitute for feeling connected with their spouse. It's available, and it's kind of sad for the couples, right? Because that's not a long-term sustainable connection. What you want actually is to turn around, rather than take that risk of blowing the marriage up. Why not face your partner and say, hey, it's been ages since we've hugged.
what role love plays in it? Is there a
What
thing
role
for
does
you?
love play? Of course, love plays a role, but I think love, every couple also along the spectrum of sibling, family kind of love to erotic, I want to always, be making love to you kind of love. There's a whole spectrum. And you will travel this spectrum through your lifetime as well. There will be different periods. You can move forward, you can move back.
Yeah.
So I think love very much plays a place because love then gives us the capacity to be kind, compassionate, and curious about the other person. I do see a lot of couples who, because they have been disconnected for so many years, it's very hard to dig up the love. It's resentment. It's, you made my life miserable, or you made me feel alone all these years. That's hard, right? Without that ounce of love and kindness and willingness to try, we cannot work together. So we ask people often when they come in, is the worst moment, finally we're in therapy, but really we should be splitting up. Then I ask them, so why are you still together? Because I want to help them recall that love. We often ask people to tell us how they first met and what their impression was of the other person. And when I observe a couple telling that story and there are some smiles, I know there's love, that we just need to pull it out. But some couples really, they have forgotten what it was like, that they tell that story like with no feeling. Oh yeah, and then, her sister introduced her to me and then and it's like, okay, this one, I have to work a lot harder to uncover that love.
What's the meaning of life for you?
Just some easy Tuesday afternoon questions. Gosh, it's a question we think about a lot. But it's hard to say in one sentence or in words. I think based on everything we've discussed, for me, the meaning of life is curiosity and freedom and exploration, right? To actually experience it to its fullest. Maybe if you ask another person, the meaning of life is, play a part, right? Be a good child, or be a good provider, or be a successful person, leave a legacy. But for me, it's really explore the world. You have one chance to walk through. How much of it are you going to see and experience?